Imagine standing at your own daughter's wedding, wearing the only suit you've owned for 15 years, and hearing her say, "Dad, you're not invited. Please leave." That's exactly what happened to me. Robert Thompson, after 25 years of giving everything to my daughter Jennifer. But what happened next taught us both a lesson neither of us would ever forget. The Arizona sun was blazing. That Saturday afternoon in March, typical Phoenix weather that made my arthritis flare up in my right knee. I'd driven 45 minutes from my modest home in Glendale to the prestigious Scottsdale Presbyterian Church, the one with the Spanish colonial architecture that Jennifer had insisted on. Cost me $18,000 just to reserve it for 4 hours. My pickup truck looked out of place among the Bentleys and Tesla Model S cars in the parking lot, but I didn't care. This was my baby girl's wedding day. I walked through those heavy oak doors carrying a gift I'd wrapped myself. An old photo album of Jennifer's mother Margaret, who'd passed when Jenny was just 3 years old. Inside the envelope was also a check for $25,000, money I'd pulled from my retirement account as a final wedding gift. The church was transformed into something from a magazine. White orchids imported from Thailand lined every pew. Crystal chandeliers had been brought in. Special. Must have been 250 guests, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a Neiman Marcus catalog. Jennifer stood near the altar in a $12,000 Vera Wang dress I'd bought her last December. She looked beautiful, just like her mother had on our wedding day 32 years ago. But when she saw me, her face changed. The smile disappeared faster than water in the desert. She whispered something to Bradley Wilson III, her new husband from one of those old Connecticut families that traced their money back to railroad barons. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Jennifer's voice carried across the church, causing heads to turn. Women in designer hats started whispering. Men in Armani suits pretended to check their phones while obviously listening. "Sweetheart, it's your wedding day. I wouldn't miss it for the world," my voice echoed in that beautiful space, bouncing off stained glass windows that depicted scenes of forgiveness and family. Bradley stepped forward, his Yale class ring catching the light. "Mr. Thompson, I believe there's been a miscommunication. This is a private ceremony for immediate family and close friends only." "I am immediate family. I'm her father," the words came out steady, though my hands were starting to shake. 68 years old, survived Vietnam, built a construction company from nothing. And here I was being dismissed like hired help. Jennifer glanced around at her guests, people whose names I recognized from society pages of the Arizona Republic. "Dad, please. You don't understand. The kind of people here. Senator Morrison is Bradley's godfather. Judge Williams married us. These aren't your kind of people." "My kind of people?" I looked at my daughter, searching for any trace of the little girl who used to wait for me at the window every night when I came home from job sites, covered in dust and exhausted but always ready for her bedtime story. "You know what I mean. You're a construction worker. These people are lawyers, doctors, business executives. It's just awkward." Jennifer's voice had that dismissive tone she developed at Harvard Business School. The one that made service workers invisible. Bradley's mother, Constance Wilson, approached wearing pearls that probably cost more than my truck. "Perhaps it would be best if we discussed this privately. We wouldn't want to cause a scene." A scene. 25 years of sacrifice, $850,000 spent on Jennifer's education and lifestyle, and my presence would cause a scene. I looked at the gift in my hands, thought about Margaret's dying wish that I give Jenny everything she needed to succeed in life. Well, I'd done that. Maybe too well. "You're right, Jennifer. I don't belong here." I set the gift on the marble pedestal near the guest book. "I won't embarrass you any longer." Walking back to my truck, each step felt heavier than carrying concrete blocks at job sites. But this weight wasn't physical. It was 25 years of memories, sacrifices, and love that had just Been thrown back in my face like worthless receipts. Margaret died on a Tuesday morning in April 1999. Jenny was 3 years old, still calling me Daddy in that sweet voice that could melt steel beams. The cancer took Margaret in 4 months, aggressive and merciless. I held her hand in that hospice room at Banner Good Samaritan as she made me promise something I'll never forget. Bobby, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the medical equipment, give Jenny everything she needs to succeed. Don't let her struggle like we did. Promise me. I promised. God help me, I kept that promise too well. Thompson construction started in my garage with one hammer, a borrowed ladder, and more determination than sense. Those first years, I worked 18-hour days. Framing houses in 115-degree heat. Running electrical at night to make extra money. Eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so Jenny could have organic baby food. By the time Jenny turned 5, I'd landed my first commercial contract. A strip mall in Tempe. Profit of $42,000. Every penny went into Jenny's college fund. Scottsdale Preparatory Academy cost $14,000 a year by the time Jenny enrolled in 3rd grade. The other parents were lawyers, surgeons, tech executives. I showed up to parent-teacher conferences with calloused hands and dust in my hair. Jenny started asking me to drop her off a block away from school. The other kids ask questions about your truck, Daddy. It's embarrassing. I bought a used Honda Accord just for school drop-offs. Cost me $8,000 I needed for new equipment, but Jenny smiled again. That smile was worth any price. Or so I thought. High school brought new expenses. SAT tutors at $300 an hour. College counselor for $5,000. Spring break trips to Europe with her debate team. Senior year alone cost me $38,000. Not counting the BMW she needed because everyone at Scottsdale Prep drives one, Dad. Arizona State University should have been affordable. In-state tuition. But Jenny needed the honors dorm. The special meal plan, the sorority dues that somehow reached $15,000 a year. I refinanced my house to cover it. When she graduated summa cum laude, I thought every sacrifice had been worth it. Then came Harvard Business School. Daddy, this is my chance to really make something of myself, she'd said over dinner at some fancy Scottsdale restaurant I couldn't pronounce. Harvard MBA would cost $94,000 per year, not counting housing in Boston, flights home, and what Jenny called networking expenses. I sold 2 rental properties I'd bought for retirement. At 63, I went back to doing manual labor on weekends, telling Jenny it was to stay in shape. Really, it was to afford her lifestyle without her knowing we were struggling. She never asked. Never wondered how a construction worker afforded Harvard tuition. $850,000 over 25 years. I had spreadsheets documenting every payment. Tuition receipts. Car titles. Credit card statements for emergencies that were never really emergencies. Designer clothes for job interviews. First-class flights because coach was uncomfortable for long flights. Sitting in that church parking lot, I pulled out my phone and looked at my Wells Fargo business account. Still healthy, thank God. Thompson Construction had 42 employees now. Annual revenue of $12 million. I'd built something solid while building Jenny into someone who was ashamed of where it all came from. Sitting in my Ford F-150, I watched that church become smaller in the rearview mirror. Then I did something I'd never done before in 25 years. I decided Jennifer needed to learn what her lifestyle actually cost, and who had been paying for it. I pulled out my phone and opened the Wells Fargo business app. My personal banker, Tom Rodriguez, had given me premium access years ago. Every payment, every vendor, every authorization was right there at my fingertips. The wedding vendors had all required payment on delivery, standard practice for high-end services in Scottsdale. But those authorizations could be revoked within a 4-hour window. I still had 2 hours and 43 minutes. First call went to Desert Bloom Florals. Martha Chen answered on the second ring. Martha, this is Robert Thompson. I need to cancel payment authorization for the Wilson Thompson wedding. Authorization code 77945. Mr. Thompson, we've already delivered. And set up everything. The Thai orchids alone cost $12,000. Martha's voice pitched higher with each word. I understand, Martha. But circumstances have changed. You'll want to retrieve what? You can. The payment stop goes through in 20 minutes, I kept my voice professional, just like negotiating construction contracts. Next was Phoenician Catering. Their premium package cost $38,000 for 250 guests. Prime rib, lobster tails, 14 different hors d'oeuvres, and a wine selection that included bottles worth more than my monthly mortgage. Phoenician Catering, this is James. James, Robert Thompson here. I'm canceling payment for the Wilson wedding. Authorization number 92886. You've got about an hour before service starts. Might want to protect your assets. Sir, we have $40,000 of food prepared. The ice sculptures alone cost $3,000. James sounded like he might cry. That's unfortunate. But the payment's been stopped. Better move fast. I made 6 more calls. The photographer who charged $8,000 for documentary-style coverage, the jazz quartet from the Phoenix Symphony. The videographer with his drone setup. Even the bakery that created a $7,000 cake with edible gold leaf. Each vendor received the same message. Payment cancelled. Collect your property. By the time I reached my house in Glendale, the first domino had fallen. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Jennifer. I let them go to voicemail and poured myself 2 fingers of Jack Daniels, the good stuff I saved for special occasions. This certainly qualified. At exactly 4:15 p.m., Martha Chen's team walked into that Presbyterian church with empty boxes and professional determination. I know because cousin Diane, who'd actually received an invitation, was texting me play-by-play updates. Bobby, they're taking the orchids right off the altar. Jenny looks like she's going to faint. Bradley's mother is turning purple. The Phoenician Catering van arrived 12 minutes later. James brought a full crew, and they weren't subtle. According to Diane, they walked straight through the main reception hall where cocktail hour was starting, covering the serving stations with white sheets, wheeling out the carving station. Even taking the silverware that had been set. Ladies and gentlemen, James announced to the stunned crowd, due to payment complications, we're required to cease service immediately. We apologize for any inconvenience. Senator Morrison nearly choked on his shrimp cocktail. Judge Williams set down his champagne like it might explode. 250 of Arizona's elite watched their 5-star reception transform into an empty church hall in real time. Jennifer finally reached me on her 19th call. I answered because I wanted to hear the lesson sinking in. Dad, what have you done? The vendors are taking everything. People are leaving. Bradley's mother is having a panic attack. I stopped paying for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend, Jennifer. Seems reasonable to me. Reasonable? You're destroying my life, she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. No, sweetheart. I'm showing you what your life actually costs. And who's been paying for it? Monday morning came with the kind of clarity that only comes from making hard decisions. I sat in the offices of Richardson and Associates, Scottsdale's premier family law firm, with 25 years of financial records spread across their mahogany conference table. Patricia Richardson herself, silver-haired and sharp as a surgical scalpel, reviewed each document with the thoroughness that justified her $500 hourly rate. Robert, this documentation is exceptional. 850,000 over 25 years, all traceable, all categorized. We can file for promissory note establishment or gift reclassification. What's the difference? I asked, sipping coffee that probably cost more per cup than I used to spend on Jenny's Happy Meals. Gift reclassification means these were conditional gifts that can be revoked due to breach of implied contract. Gratitude, respect, family obligation. Promissory note establishment treats them as loans that were never formally documented but clearly expected to be acknowledged. Patricia's fingers traced a particular bank statement. This Harvard tuition payment alone, $94,000. No parent gifts that without expecting basic respect in return. I want her to understand consequences, not destroy her life. My voice stayed steady, but my heart was racing like it hadn't since Vietnam. Will demand full documentation and repayment terms within 30 days. That gives her time to respond, seek counsel, and hopefully learn something. Patricia began drafting. On her legal pad. The total claim will be $850,000. By Wednesday afternoon, a courier delivered the legal documents to Jennifer at the Arizona Biltmore Resort, where she and Bradley were supposed to be honeymooning. I knew because the courier service sent confirmation. Signature required. Jennifer Thompson Wilson signed at 2:47 p.m. The explosion came faster than a monsoon storm in August. My phone rang exactly 11 minutes after delivery confirmation. Dad, $850,000. Are you insane? This is extortion. It's accountability, Jennifer. Something you should have learned 20 years ago. Bradley's family lawyer says this is financial abuse. Elder financial abuse, actually. They're threatening to countersue. Her voice cracked between fury and fear. Let them try. Every dollar is documented. Every payment traceable. Your lifestyle has been subsidized by my retirement fund, my business investments, my entire life's work. I stood at my kitchen window, watching construction crews across the street building new homes. You wanted me out of your life, Jennifer. This is what that looks like. The social media war started Thursday morning. Jennifer posted a tearful video on Facebook claiming her father had destroyed her wedding out of spite. Within hours, it had 3,000 shares and hundreds of comments supporting the poor bride whose father had turned vindictive. Bradley's family amplified the narrative through their country club connections. By Friday, I was receiving calls from business associates asking if I was having a mental breakdown. 3 construction contracts were postponed pending review. The Phoenix Business Journal requested a statement about the family crisis affecting Thompson Construction. That's when I decided to fight fire with truth. I posted every financial record online. 25 years of bank statements, tuition payments, car purchases, credit card bailouts. All of it. The headline read, "What $850,000 of parental love looks like when it's rejected." The tide turned within hours. Comments shifted from sympathy for Jennifer to shock at her entitlement. This father paid for Harvard and she didn't invite him to the wedding? $94,000 a year for MBA and she's crying about accountability. Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the wedding disaster, Bradley left. Jennifer called me sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words through the phone. He packed everything while I was sleeping. His mother sent a car. They're filing for annulment, Dad. 7 days of marriage and he's claiming fraud. Financial fraud because I didn't disclose the debt situation. Her voice broke completely. I'm alone at the Biltmore with a $9,000 hotel bill I can't pay. I let the silence stretch between us, remembering how she'd let me stand alone at that church door. What are you going to do, Jennifer? I don't know. My credit cards are maxed. The bank account Bradley and I opened is frozen. His family lawyer sent a cease and desist letter saying, I can't contact them. She took a shuddering breath. Dad, I need help. No, Jennifer. You need a job. A job? Dad, I have a Harvard MBA. I can't just. You can't. Or you won't. Pride is a luxury you can no longer afford. I kept my voice steady, teaching the lesson Margaret would have wanted taught. There's a Walmart on Camelback Road hiring overnight stalkers. $22 an hour. Health insurance after 90 days. Walmart? Dad, please. People from Scottsdale Prep shop there. People from Harvard. I can't stock shelves where my classmates buy groceries. Then stay at the Biltmore until they call the police. Your choice. The line went quiet except for her breathing. Finally, a whispered response. How did you know they were hiring? I called them yesterday. Told them my daughter might be applying. They remember me from when I built their loading dock expansion. Manager said he'd give you a fair shot despite no experience. Jennifer's sob carried something different this time. Not self-pity, but maybe the first crack in her entitlement. They know who I am. They know you're Robert Thompson's daughter who needs to learn how to work. That's all that matters. Monday morning at 6 a.m., Jennifer Thompson, Harvard MBA, started her first real job stocking shelves at Walmart. The same hands that had held champagne flutes at country clubs now handled cases of Diet Coke. The woman who spent $38,000 on a wedding dress now wore a blue vest with a name tag. 3 weeks into the job, she called me. Not for money, but to tell me about her first paycheck. Dad, I earned $1,412 after taxes. It's mine. I worked for it. How does it feel? Like I'm worth something real for the first time in my life. 6 months passed like Arizona seasons, subtle but unmistakable. Jennifer had been promoted to department supervisor at Walmart, making $31,000 a year. Not much for a Harvard MBA. But she'd earned every penny through sweat and determination. October brought our first real conversation at Rosie's Diner on Grand Avenue, the place I'd eaten breakfast every Saturday for 20 years. Jennifer arrived in a 10-year-old Honda Civic she'd bought with her own money. $3,000 cash from saving every penny she could. Dad, I want to show you something. She pulled out a check for $5,000, made out to Robert Thompson. It's not much, but it's a start. I calculated that I can pay you back $5,800 every year if I live modestly. That would take you 146 years, sweetheart. I pushed the check back across the Formica table. I know. But I need to try. I need you to know I understand what I took from you. Her eyes, Margaret's green eyes, filled with tears. I found Mom's journals in the storage unit. She wrote about your sacrifices even before she got sick. Working 3 jobs so she could stay home with me. Skipping meals so we could afford better formula. I hadn't known Margaret kept journals. Where did you find them? When I had to sell everything from the wedding. The dress, the rings, everything. I kept searching for valuable things to sell and found a box marked "For Jenny when she's ready." Mom knew I'd need to lose everything to understand what I had. The coffee between us grew cold as Jennifer read one entry aloud. Bobby worked 18 hours yesterday. His hands are bleeding from the construction work, but he sang Jenny to sleep anyway. I married the best man in Arizona, maybe the world. Your mother always saw the best in people. I managed through the tightness in my throat. Dad, I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding. But for 25 years of blindness. You gave me everything, and I gave you nothing but disappointment. Jennifer reached across the table, taking my calloused hands in hers. Can we start over? We already have, sweetheart. You've been working hard for 6 months. That's the daughter I raised. That's the woman your mother would be proud of. We meet every Saturday now at Rosie's Diner. Jennifer drives her Civic. I drive my F-150. We split the check, $15 each, and tip generously because Jennifer understands now what it means to work for every dollar. She never paid back the $850,000. She didn't need to. Seeing her become someone worthy of respect, someone who understands that love isn't measured in dollars but in sacrifice, that's payment enough. Margaret would be proud of both of us. This story teaches us that love without boundaries creates entitlement, while accountability builds character. For 25 years, I confused providing for my daughter with truly loving her. Real love sometimes means letting those we care about face consequences, especially when they've lost sight of gratitude and respect. Many of you watching have probably faced similar situations with adult children who take your sacrifices for granted. Maybe you funded lifestyles you couldn't afford for yourselves, hoping your generosity would be appreciated someday. But here's the truth I learned at 68 years old: children don't value what costs them nothing. Jennifer needed to lose everything to understand what she had. She needed to work minimum wage to appreciate the maximum effort I'd invested in her future. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children isn't another check, but the chance to stand on their own feet. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to John's Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and redemption. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you faced similar ingratitude from family members? How did you handle it? Hit that like button if you believe accountability matters more than enablement. And remember, it's never too late to teach valuable lessons, even to adult children who should have learned them decades ago.